Welcome to the Modern Professional Polishers Academy, where we answer daily questions, give you tips and tricks, and motivation to help you navigate the world of paint correction.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Pro Polishers Academy, where we help paint correctors like you turn your systems into consistency by moving you through the learning curves faster, utilizing formulas that work without fail. I'm Smitty, and I'll be your lead instructor. Let's get into it. In today's tech session call, we went over the purpose of a paint gauge and how it can help your business and save you from some major downfalls. Check it out. All right, let's jump into this thing. So today we're going to be discussing the purpose and the power of a paint gauge. So before we get into that, we had some feedback on YouTube about the paint hardness tech session call we had last week, and the question was asked of how to identify these different paint hardnesses. So I wanted to address that. I told them that we would address it in this week's call. So just a quick rule of thumb: if you're using a polishing foam pad, or with a medium cut, say like a Rupes yellow pad, like you can get a little bit of cut out of it and it'll also finish down nicely. If you test a paint and that paint, let's just say you do one set of passes and you knock out almost all of the defects, all of the swirls, 9 times out of 10 you got a softer paint. If you remove 50% of the swirls, 30 to 50, then you've got a medium paint for the most part. If that paint doesn't budge once you hit it with that yellow pad, chances are you have a harder paint and you might have to step it up when it's time to start compounding it. And that's also with something like a compounding polish as well. So a compounding polish and a foam pad, whatever you'd use for a quick one step, that is going to be a good rule of thumb to determine what kind of paint you're working with. Sometimes, you can do all the reading in the world and figuring out what's hard paint, what's medium, what's soft. Sometimes you just got to work on it to really understand what this stuff is. For the longest, I thought I'd worked on some hard paint, and that was up until I ran into some really hard paint. Like really had to break out some sandpaper or had to, compound it for extended amounts of time. That's when I started realizing, okay, there really is a thing called hard paint, and it's almost not wanting to budge. So just wanted to highlight that before we get into today's topic and cover that for anybody else who might have had that question as well. So, all right, for today, when it comes to paint correction, the reality of the situation is that you are going to go into every job blind because you don't know what's going on beneath the surface of what you see. It doesn't matter if the vehicle is brand new. It could have been damaged in transport, damaged on the lot and covered up by the dealership, just taking it to their in-house body shop. You never know. In fact, I've had a couple vehicles come in that were brand new, yet it was obvious that they had some type of paint work done. So had a Mustang come in a few years ago, and the owner said that he saw the car was black, and he said that he'd seen some gray in the door jambs. So he was trying to figure out, what exactly was going on with that. It was a brand new vehicle. Good morning, TP. Good morning, Russ. And he wanted to know why was the door jamb gray. He thought the vehicle had been painted. I didn't really believe that. I'm like, how can it be painted? And they don't alert you to this, but that's just the nature of the beast. So one reason you got to have a paint gauge is just because you don't know what is going on between you receiving that vehicle and it leaving the factory. A lot of hands touch a vehicle. They can go in and out of ports. They can be on ships. You never know where that vehicle is. And sometimes you only see it as, being in the owner's hand and then in your hands. But a lot of other people touch that vehicle prior to. And these types of jobs, anytime something's brand new, these jobs won't show up on the Carfax, clearly because the value is going to drop on that vehicle. And if the dealer is paying out of his pocket, then it really doesn't make any sense in doing that and losing some on the deal. So today we're going to discuss the purpose of the paint gauge and some hidden uses that you can begin implementing in your business to create additional streams of income. There's really one thing in particular, and I have extended this service to some clients before, and it's a pretty exciting, pretty simple service. I'm going to save that one for the very end of this call. So first, we're going to go over some disadvantages of not using the gauge. So like I said, you're going into every project blind, so you run the risk of working on thin paint every time you put a machine on a vehicle. So I helped out some guys once upon a time with a Nissan Silvia. and it was a right-hand drive car. It was imported, all that good stuff, old school paint on it. It was crazy. And if it wasn't for me breaking out the gauge, then that roof on that vehicle would have been burned, because the entirety of that vehicle was reading like 20 mil thick until you got up to the roof. And I mean, literally between the B pillar and the roof line, that little half-inch of space, it was going from 20 mil thick on the sides to 2 mil thick on the top, or less than 2. It was something crazy. And the only way we would have been able to figure that out was by using the paint gauge, because everything looked normal. So yeah, that would have been a scary car. It wouldn't have been something that I touched getting right into the game, just because of the custom paint, just because it's probably a 20-year-old paint job and you run that risk. But because I had the experience, I was good. But if I didn't have a paint gauge, I still wouldn't have touched it. So that's how important that gauge is. So you run the risk of cracking bad bodywork. So Bondo that may be about to crack or is already cracking can make a great day go bad for you real quick. We had a car come in one time to get some some estimates done, and man, this thing, it was clear. Like the bond, you could see the white, like it was cracking, like the Hulk was stepping on the ground and the ground was breaking up from an earthquake. Like that's how bad this Bondo was. And I'm looking at it like, man, this is some of the worst body work I've ever seen. For that one, I didn't need to have a paint gauge in hand. I just knew what it was. But it could have just been a small spider web. It could have been, something minimal that you would have thought you can get out. And then the next thing you know, you're putting pressure on this machine and heat on this machine, and now stuff's starting to fall off. You come back in the garage later on and you see chunks of the vehicle on the ground. You never know what could be going on with some of these vehicles. And, if it's bad body work involved, sometimes you're going to be able to see it with the naked eye, but you might want to go a little bit deeper into it. And that gauge will definitely let you know what's going on back there. Typically, the more inexpensive gauges, they're going to read, they'll read overflow at about 50 mil thick. And if it's 50 mil, there's Bondo in there. So really good sidekick. It's literally like having an employee, in your pocket that you don't have to pay, but they pay you and they help you stay out of situations where you might have to come out of pocket. So, you can end up in, this is a good one right here. So you can end up in agree to disagree conversations and potential arguments with clients about a vehicle having had work done in the past. So imagine somebody's bringing you a vehicle and they're saying, oh, this is all original paint and never been touched before, whatever the case may be. Sometimes you can just look at the vehicle and know this vehicle's been painted or something's been done to it. But if both of you are just using your eyeball to gauge this vehicle, and the customer is someone who thinks that they know more than you do, then you got to have that thing that separates the two of you. So something about you has to educate them and let them know this guy's got more up his sleeve than I do, than I thought I did. And that gauge is what breaks that barrier. So if you're looking at it and you see this heavy orange peel and you know that it's aftermarket paint, but they don't believe it, then you literally will be in an agree to disagree conversation, and you might even offend them, right? Because they think nothing's been done to it. They did all the homework. There was nothing on the Carfax. We understand how that Carfax stuff works. It really means nothing. If somebody doesn't report it, if somebody wants to just pay out of their pocket, as opposed to paying a deductible and reporting it, then they're gonna do that. Especially if it's gonna be less expensive to just pay out of pocket. So if you have that gauge in hand and you start reading those panels and you educate them on, okay, these are factory panels here, these haven't been touched, let's read this first, and then you go over to read those panels that you're calling out, or vice versa, it will definitely close the mouth of that person that is trying to let you know that nothing's been done to this car. If you're doing it for a living, you got to have some tools in play that are letting them know that you're the professional and not them. So, and sometimes you'll even get people who are in the automotive industry. They might be a detailer, whatever the case may be. You got to have something that differentiates you from them and lets them know that you know what you're talking about. So, so you really might want to turn that vehicle away because it's been repainted, because you're not sure of what's going on with it. You can see inconsistency in the color. You're not sure about the thickness. Even if it's reading the same mil thickness all the way around, you don't know who painted it, so you don't know how much of that thickness is base coat or how much is clear coat. So, you know, you don't want to get excited when you see 10 mil thickness and think that you got a lot of clear to work with. You could have half a mil of clear on that thing and you end up burning through it. And all of that thickness could be in the base coat. So, or even in the primer, who knows? So, you may not want to work on it just because there's a risk that could pop up on that vehicle, just because you feel like, whether it's burning paint or just any particular reason, if there's something that's going on in that moment and you're like, I want to get out of this vehicle because of something legitimate, start putting the gauge around that vehicle and start showing inconsistency in that thing. So the main thing is going to be, you know, for thin paint. But again, even that Bondo, like, I'm not touching a car that I know has got some crazy Bondo going on. That thing can start splitting and cracking, and you have a nightmare on your hands, and they think it's something you did. So, yeah, that's a major one. So, let's see. So advantages. So you can know which panels on a vehicle are metal and which ones are composite. That way you can understand why some panels might be harder or easier to work on than others. It's not always about the paint thickness. You could be getting odd vibrations, you know, through certain panels. And if you're new to paint correction, you won't think about the fact that a hood is potentially aluminum and the fenders are steel, and that's why the hood is buckling while you're working on it. So that can happen often. You can strategically plan out a vehicle based on its paint thickness. Just because a vehicle may have had some paint work done or has some thin spots doesn't mean you can't work on it at all. So the gauge is going to let you know what you can and can't do, and then you can lay out, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Driver's side's been repainted, so we're going to just do a light polish on this side, and it's reading, you know, 5 mil thick. I know the painter who did it, so I know that the paint is the clear is going to be enough for me to work on without me having to potentially burn through something. And let's just say if it's been repainted, it might be like 8 to 10 mil thick, and then the passenger side might be 5 mil, 3 to 5, depending on what you're working on if it's a newer vehicle. So you'll be able to have all your paths laid out for each section, and you can take your steps accordingly based on what's going on with that vehicle. You don't have to just turn the entire vehicle away if you understand how that gauge operates and what you can and can't work on. And so, guys, question for you, if you got an answer: do you have the gauge? Chico, I know you have the gauge. How often do you use it? And have you ever had a bad situation because you failed to produce the gauge on the vehicle? Come on in, Chico. What's going on, man?
A couple years ago, I was working on a Ferrari, and I was doing some readings on there, and I seen that I read the paint by microns, so I could see it was thicker where the stripes were versus the rest of the car. And I did some research that, like, say if you buy a new Ferrari and you want stripes on it, what they'll do is they'll take the car.
If you want to hear the rest of that call, join us in the Pro Polishers Academy. The link is in the description below. You get access to the call archive that has today's call as well as any previous call that we've had. And you can also tap in with us Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays in our live calls. And you can ask whatever questions that you may need to and get the full-blown conversation. It's really good stuff. You also get access to the 24/7 Discord server where anybody in the academy can help you with whatever is going on with your situation, whether or not you're trying to figure out how to do paint correction on a particular vehicle, or if you need help with pricing, anything having to do with paint correction, we got you covered. Also, download my free correction and coating product guide. The link is also in the description for that as well. It's got a few of our favorite products that we like to use right here in the studio. And we've also got the full-blown pad product and tool guide. The link is in the description below as well. And you can follow our full system, our full-blown system here in this shop to help scale your business as well. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification button for more videos just like this one at the Pro Polishers Academy. That's it for today, guys. We'll see you next time. The paint is waiting on you. Peace.